William is able to read, but in spite of daily practice, he has great difficulty in controlling a pencil. He is trying to write his name, William.
In mid-century hospitals, even big-name celebrity parents were being told something cold and shocking. Send the child away and don't look back. These are real stories from old Hollywood, where doctors straight up said some kids should be hidden, placed in institutions, or completely forgotten, and the parents who pushed back against that harsh reality.
A chair has been adapted by the school carpenter so that Janet can sit correctly. Her work is protected by a transparent cover and held in position by a frame which fits snugly into the table.
Roy Rogers and Dale Evans faced that moment with their daughter, Robin Elizabeth Rogers, born August 26, 1950. Dale later shared how the room shifted instantly when nurses saw the baby was blue. The umbilical cord had wrapped around Robin's neck, and suddenly everything got tense. She was rushed into an oxygen box while doctors hovered close, whispering, running tests, and watching every move. Then, just 3 weeks later, another heavy update dropped. A doctor detected a heart murmur and told Dale it was another complication, something often connected to Down syndrome. And just like that, the pressure and uncertainty grew even more. Then came the advice, and it hit hard. Evans never forgot what the doctor told her. In situations like this, babies should be placed in an institution as early as possible before they become too deeply rooted in their parents' hearts. That was the mindset back then, cold and clinical, like feelings didn't matter at all. But Roy Rogers and Dale Evans weren't having it. They refused. No hesitation. They brought Robin home to the Hollywood Hills, where her brothers and sisters gathered around, curious and full of love, even though caring for her came with real challenges. Dale shared how feeding time could turn scary fast. Robin would start turning blue because she struggled to suck from the bottle properly. As time went on, her care had to become more structured and constant. Dale wrote about a devoted caregiver known as Cow Cow, someone who became a steady presence in Robin's life. When the family later moved near Encino, they even built a small separate house just for Robin and her nurse. Comfortable, peaceful, but still right there at home. Dale made it clear she didn't want her daughter hidden away from the world. Robin still experienced moments of joy. She was taken outside in a small cart to see the animals, and Dale remembered a dog named Lana who stayed right by her side like a quiet protector. But in 1952, everything shifted again. The other children came down with mumps, and Robin caught it too. What started as simple swelling quickly turned serious, and Dale described how the fever began rising fast, faster than anyone expected, and far more dangerous than it first seemed. 2 doctors worked frantically over the child, while Roy and Dale paced outside, stuck in that unbearable wait for answers. Every second dragged. Every sound made their hearts jump. Then one doctor came out with a warning that hit like a shock. Robin could die at any moment, even within seconds. And heartbreakingly, she did. Dale Evans later wrote that Robin passed shortly after 8 p.m. on August 24, 1952, just 2 days before her second birthday, turning what should have been a celebration into pure grief. The loss didn't fade quietly. The next year, Evans released Angel Unaware, a deeply personal memoir that turned Robin's short life into one of the most talked about stories from old Hollywood. A mother refusing to hide her child, no matter what anyone said. Another story unfolded with Spencer Tracy and Louise Tracy and their son, John Tracy. John was born on June 26, 1924 in Milwaukee, and before he even turned 1, Louise started noticing something wasn't right. Loud noises didn't make him react. No flinching, no turning, nothing. She called his name over and over, hoping for even the smallest response. But he never turned toward her. Doctors eventually diagnosed him with deafness, what they called back then nerve deafness. There were no real treatment options offered, and Louise was told to simply wait until he was old enough for formal schooling. But waiting wasn't her plan, not even close. She took matters into her own hands, working with him every single day at home, speaking clearly in front of his face, repeating sounds and words, teaching him to read lips and follow expressions with intense focus and determination. In 1927, when John was just 3 years old, Louise made a bold move. She enrolled him in the Wright Oral School in New York, where deaf children were taught how to speak and read lips. It wasn't easy, but she stayed fully committed, pushing forward no matter how tough things got. Then, another crisis hit hard. John contracted polio, adding a physical disability on top of everything the family was already dealing with. Most people would have felt overwhelmed, but Louise didn't stop. She kept going with even more determination. Years later, in July 1942, she stepped onto a public stage and spoke openly about what it truly meant to raise a deaf child, the struggles, the confusion, and the constant fight to give him a real chance. That moment didn't just inspire people, it sparked something bigger. It helped launch a parent training program in Los Angeles, which later grew into the John Tracy Clinic, a place built so other families wouldn't have to face that same fear alone. Then another powerful story begins with Dorothy Dandridge and Harold Nicholas, and their daughter, Carolyn Suzanne Nicholas, born on September 2, 1943. Dorothy later shared a moment that stayed with her forever. She went into labor while Harold was out playing golf, and he had the car. She was forced to wait, and according to Dorothy, that delay weighed on her for years. A friend later described the situation in intense detail. Dorothy had to be rushed out because she was already so close to delivering right there, turning it into a chaotic and frightening moment. What happened next turned into a serious and complicated forceps delivery, where the baby was deprived of oxygen during birth. At first, Carolyn, known as Lynn, appeared physically normal. Nothing immediately raised alarms. But as the months passed, it became clear something wasn't right. Her development wasn't following the usual path at all. Dorothy went from doctor to doctor, searching for answers, hoping someone could explain what was going on. The truth didn't fully come out until Lynn was already 3 years old, and it hit hard. The diagnosis was severe brain damage. Doctors quickly advised institutionalization, like that was the only option on the table. But Dorothy refused to accept that path. Instead, she arranged private care, determined to keep her daughter in a more personal and protected environment. One account explains that Lynn was placed with Eloise Matthews, known as Auntie Mama in Dorothy's circle, who cared for her for nearly 20 years. Dorothy covered the expenses and tried to keep everything out of the public eye, but the pressure never let up. Lynn needed constant supervision, and the weight of it all started to take over Dorothy's life. It became a non-stop cycle, working, paying bills, and dealing with emotional strain that didn't ease up. Her marriage couldn't survive under that pressure, and the divorce was finalized in 1951. By the early 1960s, things got even worse. Financial struggles piled up after bankruptcy and failed investments, and Dorothy reached a breaking point where she could no longer afford Lynn's caretaker. Lynn eventually returned to Dorothy at the exact moment Dorothy herself was losing her home in the Los Angeles hills. It all started falling apart at once. During the move, in the middle of all the chaos, Lynn sat down at a piano and began playing the same simple pattern again and again, almost like she was locked into that one sound. Movers were carrying boxes out, furniture disappearing piece by piece, but then something unexpected happened. They stopped, just to listen. And when she finished, they actually applauded right there in the middle of the move. Dorothy, standing in a house that was being emptied around her, still found the strength to serve them hamburgers and coffee, holding it together even as everything slipped away. But when the money finally ran out, Dorothy faced the decision she had been avoiding for years. With no other option left, she placed Lynn in a California state institution, a move that went against everything she had tried to protect for so long. Another story unfolds with Anna Magnani and her son, Luca Magnani, born in Rome in October 1942. By then, Anna was already rising as one of Italy's biggest screen stars, yet she lived a fiercely private life and raised Luca as a single parent, keeping him away from the spotlight as much as possible. Then, in 1944, polio entered their lives without warning while Luca was still very young. He contracted the disease, and the damage stayed. Years passed, but improvement never came. By the time he turned 7, he still couldn't use his legs and spent long stretches in a sanitarium for treatment. People who saw him often remembered a striking, dark-haired boy who looked healthy at first glance, except for the paralysis that had taken away his ability to walk, changing the course of his life completely. Magnani poured everything she had into trying to help her son. Money, time, energy, chasing treatments, doctors, clinics, specialists, and every promise that sounded even slightly hopeful. She refused to give up, pushing forward again and again, hoping something would change. But eventually, the truth caught up with her. She was told clearly, the damage was permanent. Luca would never walk again. That reality hit hard, but Magnani didn't slow down. She pushed for bigger contracts and higher pay, determined to secure Luca's future, no matter what it took. Then one moment stuck with her in a way she couldn't shake. She saw a war veteran without legs dragging himself along a sidewalk, and it stayed in her mind. After that, she said something people never forgot, realizing life could become even more difficult for children like Luca as they grew older. Another story begins with Charlotte Ray and John Strauss, and their son Andrew, known as Andy Strauss. When Andy was still very young, Charlotte felt deep down that something wasn't right, even if she couldn't fully explain it. While she was pregnant with her younger son, she decided to have Andy evaluated, hoping to finally get some answers. The doctor examined him but told her to come back after the baby was born, delaying what she already feared. When she returned, the answer came blunt and direct. Her son, the doctor said, was autistic. Ray later recalled how she misheard it at first and replied, "He's artistic." The doctor corrected her, saying, "No, autistic." Then came another heavy moment. The doctor told her to wait another year, leaving her stuck in uncertainty and worry. Magnani threw everything she had into helping her son: money, time, connections, running from one doctor to the next, chasing clinics, specialists, and any promise that sounded even a little hopeful. She wasn't backing down for anything, pushing harder each time, believing there had to be a breakthrough somewhere. But eventually, the truth came in and hit hard. No more maybes, no more hope-filled guesses. The damage was permanent. Luca would never walk again. That kind of news could break anyone, but Magnani shifted her focus instead of stopping. She went after bigger roles, stronger contracts, and higher pay, all with one goal: lock in her son's future no matter what. Then one moment stayed burned in her memory. She saw a war veteran with no legs dragging himself down a sidewalk, and it shook her deeply. After that, she made a chilling realization, saying she feared it could be even harder for children like Luca once they grew up and had to face the world on their own. Then the story moves to Charlotte Ray and John Strauss, and their son, Andrew, Andy Strauss. When Andy was still very young, Charlotte sensed something wasn't right, even if she couldn't fully explain it yet. That feeling wouldn't go away. While pregnant with her second child, she took Andy in for evaluation, searching for answers she couldn't ignore anymore. The doctor examined him but told her to come back after the baby was born, putting everything on hold and stretching out the uncertainty. When she finally returned, the answer came straight and without comfort. Her son, the doctor said, was autistic. Ray later shared that she misheard it at first and responded, "He's artistic." The correction came immediately. No, autistic. Then came another difficult instruction. The doctor told her to wait another year, leaving her in a long stretch of confusion, worry, and unanswered questions. The response came in fast, and it was overwhelming. Hundreds of families reached out, all dealing with similar struggles, all searching for answers and support. What started as scattered efforts quickly turned into something much bigger. By August 12, 1949, a national cerebral palsy organization was officially formed, bringing those isolated groups together under one powerful movement. And it didn't stop there. Television soon became a major tool, raising money and awareness in a way people had never seen before. In 1950, United Cerebral Palsy launched one of its first telethons, pushing the issue right into millions of American homes and forcing people to pay attention. But for Cookie, the reality never changed. She lived with the diagnosis her entire life and passed away in 1973. Still young, her story leaving a lasting impact. Then comes another Tajal chapter with Jean Tierney and Oleg Cassini and their daughter Antoinette Daria Cassini. In 1943, Tierney was pregnant with her first child when she made a brief appearance at the Hollywood Canteen. Not long after that visit, she became sick with German measles, rubella, something that would change everything. Their daughter Daria was born on October 15, 1943, and the effects were devastating. Daria was born with congenital rubella syndrome, a condition linked to deafness, cataracts, and serious developmental challenges. About a year later, a former Marine approached Tierney and reminded her that they had met at the Hollywood Canteen. Then came a question that sent chills through her. Had she come down with German measles? The truth hit hard. The Marine had broken quarantine to attend that event, exposing others without warning. Tierney never forgot that moment. Daria spent much of her life in institutional care, even after Tierney and Cassini separated. Her care remained a constant responsibility, written into the legal and financial agreements that followed, showing just how lasting and heavy that commitment truly was. She lived into old age, passing away on September 11, 2010, just short of her 67th birthday. A life marked by challenges that never fully faded. Then another shocking story unfolds with Patricia Neal and Roald Dahl and their son, Theo Dahl. On December 5, 1964, baby Theo was out in his pram in New York with the family nanny when something unthinkable happened. A taxi struck the carriage. The impact was severe, leaving Theo with major head trauma, including multiple skull fractures and a serious brain injury. For nearly 2 weeks, he was kept inside an oxygen tent while doctors fought to keep him alive. Every moment uncertain and tense. He made it through that first critical phase, but then came another wave of complications. The injury led to hydrocephalus, a dangerous buildup of fluid and pressure on the brain that couldn't be ignored. Surgeons implanted a shunt to drain the fluid, but the situation didn't stabilize. The device kept failing again and again. Over the following months, Theo went through repeated surgeries as doctors tried to fix the issue, but blockages kept returning and the pressure kept shifting unpredictably. At times, those sudden changes even caused temporary blindness, adding another layer of fear to an already intense situation. When the family later returned to Britain, Theo's treatment continued under pediatric neurosurgeon Kenneth Till at Great Ormond Street Hospital. Roald Dahl, determined to find a better solution, brought in Stanley Wade, an engineer and toy maker known for his precision work. Together, Wade, Dahl, and Till closely studied the failing system, searching for answers and refusing to accept the limits they were facing. Out of that intense crisis came something unexpected: the Wade-Dahl-Till valve, introduced in 1962 and later used to help thousands of children facing the same condition. It turned a terrifying situation into a breakthrough that reached far beyond one family. But there was a bitter twist in the story. Theo himself never ended up needing the new device. By the time it was ready, his condition had stabilized. Still, the accident that nearly took his life ended up creating something that would save and improve the lives of so many others for years to come. Then the focus shifts to Tex Ritter and Dorothy Fay, and their son, Tom Ritter. Tom was born with cerebral palsy, and years later, Dorothy described his birth in devastating terms. She said it followed a serious traffic accident that left her with a broken back, leading to an emergency cesarean section. She recalled the moment in extreme detail, saying that both she and her baby were gone for 11 minutes, a claim that shows just how intense and frightening that experience felt to her. Whatever exactly happened in that delivery room, the impact didn't fade. It stayed for life. As the boys grew up, Tom's disability became part of everyday family reality, shaping how they lived and supported each other. His brother, John Ritter, later shared how he saw Tom differently. He believed Tom was stronger than their parents sometimes realized. When Tom fell, John would tell him directly to get back up, pushing him in a way that reflected both toughness and belief. He even taught him how to play wiffle ball, turning small, everyday moments into something meaningful. Dorothy Fay later spoke about Tom in a way that stood out. She didn't describe him as a tragedy, but as living proof that cerebral palsy didn't erase someone's future. And Tom showed that clearly. He grew into adulthood, attended several universities, and in the early 1970s, he even spent a summer in Washington working for the Senate Select Committee investigating Watergate, stepping into a world most people wouldn't have expected. Then another story takes shape with Louis Armstrong and Daisy Parker and a child they were raising, Clarence Armstrong. One day, during a heavy rainstorm in New Orleans, something went wrong fast. Clarence wandered onto the wet rear gallery of their second-floor apartment. The wood was old, worn down, and dangerously slick. Armstrong later said he and Daisy were in the front room listening to records when they suddenly heard crying. He rushed to the back and saw Clarence climbing up the steps, hurt, shaken, and holding his head in fear. Armstrong didn't hesitate. He brought in the best doctors he could afford, looking for answers and hoping for reassurance. But the news wasn't what he wanted to hear. They told him the fall had caused permanent damage. Clarence, they said, would remain years behind other children mentally. Armstrong kept trying, moving from one school to another, refusing to give up at first. One Catholic school accepted him for a time, but eventually sent him home. That's when Armstrong made a shift. He stopped chasing miracle fixes and started focusing fully on supporting the child right in front of him, day by day. He built a routine for Clarence, keeping things steady and structured as much as possible. He worked with him on the basics, reading, writing, spelling, taking it step by step, day by day. And whenever work pulled him away, he made sure someone reliable was always there to look after him. When Armstrong moved north to Chicago, Clarence went with him, staying close and continuing that care. He attended a special school, and according to Armstrong, he stood out, becoming one of the best athletes there. Baseball, basketball, football. He stayed active and known around the neighborhood as Little Louis Armstrong, a name people remembered. But even with those moments, stability never fully settled in. Armstrong later described Clarence as nervous and easily shaken, especially in homes where adults argued or raised their voices. That kind of environment affected him deeply. So Armstrong made another change. He moved Clarence into a different home where things felt calmer and safer. And one thing he made clear: he never tried to hide him from the world. In 1949, Armstrong even brought Clarence onto live television, giving him a chance to say a few words on the Eddie Condon floor show, putting him right in front of an audience instead of keeping him in the background. Then the story shifts again to William Christopher and Barbara Christopher, and their son, Ned Christopher. Ned was still very young when his father was just starting the role that would later make him widely known on the TV show MASH, marking the beginning of another journey shaped by family and unexpected challenges. Even as a toddler, Ned showed clear signs that he was different, and it didn't go unnoticed. He insisted on dressing himself, and if something as small as his underwear felt off, it could trigger a full meltdown. He didn't like being held either. His body would go stiff the moment someone tried to cuddle him. At the same time, he developed intense fixations, memorizing and repeating names in a way that caught adults completely off guard. But despite all of that, there was one thing he still couldn't do. He couldn't say his own name. As the years went on, the gap between him and other children became more obvious. The family searched for answers, going from one specialist to another, only to hear completely different opinions. One doctor said he was hopeless, while another brushed it off, saying he was just a little behind and would catch up. It took years before they finally got a clear answer: autism. Then came a piece of advice that crossed a line. One specialist, knowing Ned was adopted, said, "Why not give him back?" William Christopher later repeated the comparison exactly. "You reached into a barrel and pulled out a bad apple. Why not put the apple back?" But William and Barbara Christopher didn't hesitate. They refused completely. Instead, they chose to raise Ned, stand by him, and tell their story. They later wrote Mixed Blessings, sharing the reality of their journey and the choices they made along the way. If this story stayed with you, make sure to like, subscribe, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and drop your thoughts in the comments below.